Hi everybody, happy 4th of July. Welcome back to Plus Images TV. I'm your host, Desda. Thanks for joining us. Today we're out on another adventure. We're going to a grist mill. It's called Graue Mill, and it was first opened in 1852. It is a museum of the time, and it is also one of the Underground Railroad stops. We'll be showing you all of that and more, so come join us, won't you please? This is an example of a child's bedroom. See the darling little tea set, the little chair, and the doll with the porcelain head? This surely was a simpler time and a far cry from what children have today, but they surely appreciated all the little things that they had to make their lives comfortable. And this is the general store. Look at the thread, the barrels for crackers, pickles, the potbelly stove in the corner, the coffee grinder, the scale. And this is the sitting room. See the stereograph on the table? That was their version of our Viewmaster from today. Velvet lined chairs. The writing desk. I love the peacock quills. And here's the kitchen. The hutch in the corner. And of course, the spinning wheels to spin flax into thread. There are different examples of spinning wheels. So many sorts and types, and a drop leaf table. I have one of those myself. There's another beautiful hutch with the blue and white plates. A simpler time, and yet it was a lot of hard work to keep up the farmhouse. The ice box.
Are going to be spun into thread.
And here's the loom.
In fact, when you were upstairs, did you see
used to make rugs
a pole with flax
and clothing.
spun around it? That's a flax wheel. Okay? And
It's
so
still operational
flax
today.
can get spun just like wool can get spun. All right. So
if you're ever in the Chicagoland area, this would be a great place to come. Here's a poster that's down in the basement. The Underground Railroad rest stop in the area. And here you see an example of the gears that were used to operate the big water wheel, which in turn operated the grinding stones where they ground corn, wheat, and all kinds of grain This was an operational grist mill and was opened in 1852. Here are examples of some swords. Here's another, I believe this was a musket. And here's a cap from a Union soldier. And here's all the accoutrement used to fill the musket. Bullets, the pouch carried gunpowder. And here are some sad artifacts. These are bracelets used on slaves. Slave tags. More chains. And the punishment collar. What a disgraceful part of our history, but part of our history nonetheless. And these are also things on display in the area where the Underground Railroad was operated. And here we are upstairs, about to see the grinding master grind some grain. I had the privilege of being pushed back behind the counter so I could get a close-up look. Although I have to tell you, I've seen this demonstration many dozens of times since I've been a child. And I was happy to bring my grandchildren here this day to see an example of how the mill works and how the grain was ground and how the mill operated. So let's listen.
Oh, then you won't mind my quiz. You all have come to visit Mr. Graue's grist mill. What is a mill?
It's a wheel that crushes
Ooh,
food.
close recovery.
It's a thing powered by water that turns.
A sawmill.
It's a circular.
A steel mill. What is a mill?
Doesn't it like processing?
That's a windmill. But again, what is a mill? We have all kinds of mills. So what is a mill? Actually, a mill is a factory, or it's a building where they produce a product using a simple process. So a sawmill cuts logs into lumber with a saw, cutting it into that. A grist mill starts with grist. A grist is any grain which is ready to be ground. So I'm holding corn. This is corn grist. And I will go back and step into the importance of grains. There are 635 species of grain. There are 15 species of wheat. There are 12 species of corn. So those are all different kinds of grains. There are 635 species of grain. The grains are the most important food there is. They are important because they're a complete meal in a package that is so good. Once the grains have dried, once they've completed growing and they have dried, they are so hard that they won't spoil. 100-year-old grain is just as good to eat as fresh dried grain.
Didn't know that.
It's an amazing food. It's the only food that can be stored indefinitely. Potatoes can be stored for a few years in a root cellar, in a cold, dry place. Have you ever seen a month-old tomato?
Yeah. Oh.
They're kind of ugly, aren't they?
Yeah.
The grains are 100 years old, and they're just as good as the day they were harvested. So here's a very great food, complete meal, contains all your nutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals, and fiber, and lots of vitamins and all sorts of other interesting chemicals, with one problem. Human beings aren't designed to eat dried grains. If you tried to chew a grain up, you could very easily break your teeth. If you swallow the grain whole, it'll go clear through your digestive system without even getting soft. So here's a perfect food that you can't eat. Well, that is until about 20,000 years ago, when a very smart Stone Age woman decided there had to be a way to get to the nutrition in a grain. She could watch animals eat grain. You know, birds love grains. Cows love to eat grains. But she knew her family couldn't eat them. And she thought about it, and she, well, okay, cows have great big teeth that they use to grind the grain up as they chew it. So maybe she found this nice flat rock down by the creek near her camp, and she put some grain on it. She took another rock, and she chewed the grain up. The term is she ground the grain. We call a ground grain a meal. Now, I didn't do a very careful job on that. I just took less than a minute to grind it, so you can see there are a lot of big chunks in it. Those big chunks wouldn't digest very well, but they'll go through your system. But now most of the nutrition is available to eat. 20,000 years ago, a smart Stone Age woman invented a tool, the saddle stone, which eventually led to building cities. Until you can store food for an extended period of time, there's no need to build a city, because you have to move 3 to 6 times a year just to follow the growing seasons of your food. Now, this tool, the saddle stone, I don't know how much time I have with you guys. Some want to find out what it's like, what it was like to be a Stone Age woman?
Who wants to try it?
Who wants to try?
You want to try it, Tom?
Tommy, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I know what it feels like to be a woman.
You know, intriguing to me, it's often intriguing to me with school groups. I say, I need a volunteer. I need a 20,000-year-old. Oh, I say I need a volunteer, and everyone's hand would go up. And I would say a 20,000-year-old, and half the hands would go down. And then I would say woman, and all the boys' hands would come down. So, do I have a volunteer?
Tommy, go for it, dude.
Come on, step right up. Press down hard and there you go. Yeah, I can hear it. You're getting into it. You have to press a lot harder. You know what? No, yes, they did. Let me help you out. Step back just a minute. Sit over there. Now you can stand on the box, and now you can put your you can put your whole body on it. Rub back and forth. Press hard.
One of us girls may have to switch out with them. Yeah, we're dying of starvation over here.
Women would spend 3 to 6 hours a day grinding the grain that they would use to feed their family for one day.
Oh, wow.
You're going to show him what a girl how much a girl can do?
Do it, girl. Go for it.
I'm 70, I could do that. You're getting it. It's coming. Slowly but surely.
20 years later.
Slowly and steady wins the
You're
race.
so mean. Don't do that.
I'm actually impressed. Most boys, when I have them do this, about this time they start pounding.
Oh my God.
He follows directions well. So
Yes, he's doing a good job, and it's very impressive. Now, I could make life a little easier for you.
He's talking to you.
Tommy, he's talking to you.
Let me show you part of the secret. See, when I took the stone, I took hold of it and rocked it.
Well, that makes a big difference. Grab hold of it like he did and rock it. Hello.
Hi there. I didn't see you sneak up behind me. I have an automatic reset. When I reach the end of my presentation, I start over, so you don't miss anything.
Can you imagine doing that for up to 6 hours a day?
Dominic, I think it'll turn to dust.
It's supposed to be dust.
What's the whole point, bro?
I haven't.
You're supposed to like let it melt in your mouth.
Okay, that's
No,
fine. You
you
did a
just,
great.
like,
You did a
make
great,
bread.
great job.
It's like cornbread.
Okay, now
You did great. Look at there.
there were many inventions, many advances. That's the beauty of technology. Is it starts with I've got a problem, and someone says, well, here's a solution to that problem, and then someone else says, there's got to be a better way, and they come up with a better way. There was a device invented called the rotary quern, which is this device here. It consists of, I'm not going to do that. It has 2 stones. It has a bed stone, just like we had. It has a runner stone. But now we're going to use leverage. I have a crank here and I can now, instead of pushing it back and forth, I can use the weight of the runner stone pressing down, and I can just turn the crank and you can see coming out between the two stones. Now I'm grinding now wheat instead of, because corn kernels are too big to fit through this, to fit between the stones. But you can see I had the same thing as the corn. See the finely ground and the coarser ground stuff. Now with wheat, people were more interested in finely ground stuff. They didn't want to use the meal. They wanted to separate the meal into two fractions. So they used a sieve to separate the bran, the hull of the grain, from flour. And this is now whole grain flour, like you pay a lot of money for in the store, relatively speaking. But most people, what though early people didn't realize, they thought this hard stuff was hard to digest, so they threw it out, maybe fed it to their animals. But there is very good nourishment here. It's just you have to use some tricks, like soak it, heat it, cook it. So, how many of you like oatmeal?
Oh, I love oatmeal. I just stir that.
Oatmeal is a meal. It's oats that have been ground, but not separated. Are there any, one last thing. I said 3 to 6 hours to make enough for, well, let's see, that would be, I can grind about a pound of grain an hour here, but I take rest in between. Mr. Graue's grist mill, this machine here, was invented over 2,000 years ago. It, just as the rotary quern, it consists of two stones, a bed stone and a runner stone above it. However, the runner stone is supported on a shaft that you can raise and lower the stone, so you can put the two stones very close together and finely grind. You can separate the stone and have a coarser grind. But since the stones aren't in contact, you don't have the friction of stone to stone turning. So we have to, since this is a machine, we have to have the ability to add grain to the mill. So I open a gate valve in the hopper. In the hopper I have corn grist. I poured some corn grist into the eye of the runner stone. Now, when this mill was water powered, I would have used that lever sticking up through the floor and shove it to engage the gears, engage the mill to the water wheel on the outside of the mill. As a museum, we needed a more reliable energy source, so we use an electric motor. Now, since we're worried about safety, we start the mill running, it starts turning slowly and picks up its speed very rapidly. You can see the bucket on the floor. You can see stuff dumping into it. We're not quite up yet, we're almost up to speed. I will now stop it.
It's gotta be like 2.5 pounds of flour.
I can grind, as I said, about 1 pound of grain an hour here, 2 pounds of grain an hour with the rotary quern. If I use an industrial grade machine, still a rotary quern, I can grind about 50 pounds of grain an hour. With Mr. Graue's mill, I can grind 45 pounds of grain a minute. Now, what I would like you to do, and this is the commercial, take a pinch of this and rub it between your fingers and feel how slippery your fingers become. What most people don't realize is that when you buy cornmeal in the grocery store from any of the major mills, the first thing they do at the mill is remove all the oil.
Someone feels like it's scalp.
Yeah.
And it is, they've removed a major portion of the nutrition of the cornmeal and a major portion of the flavor. So what you're buying is what's left over after they have made all the high profit stuff, taking it all out of it.
They use that for other things?
Yes, you buy corn oil. Corn oil is the most common cooking oil, and that's where you should get. That's why the Graue mill cornmeal makes entirely different tasting cornbread. Any questions?
Do you ever engage the water wheel outside for demonstrations?
We used to. Unfortunately, the mechanism was damaged in the last flood, the flood we had in 2013, and it has not been properly repaired, so we can't open the sluice gate. The second thing is that the mill race has to be kept clean, and the Forest Preserve does not want to spend the time doing that. So the mill race is stopped up so we don't get enough water flow. So we could, but we don't. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much. Have a great day. And I will.
Wasn't that museum's tour fun and so informative? I've been going there since I've been a kid, and I just love it so much. I brought my son there, and he's brought all his children, and the children that were with me today are his. It was so much fun. Then we had a little picnic in the the park across the street, and now the kids are down by the creek. It's called Salt Creek, and they're going to be feeding some ducks, some wild bird feed. If you're going to feed wild fowl, such as ducks or geese, I would advise not giving bread or crackers. That's not really good for them. They can have lettuce. And we had lots of wild bird seed from a bird feeder my grandson made during the winter for the birds. So we had a big bag of that left over. So they're doing that and having fun. I hope you enjoyed this trip. We'll insert that little video somewhere in here, either before or after this, but I really appreciate you coming along, and once again, I just encourage you to live your best life. Fortunately, this museum had a wheelchair accessible lift outside the front door. This museum, and well, a grist mill, is 169 years old. And I so appreciate the fact that it's accessible. I was only able to sit on the first floor, but I had a lovely talk with the gentleman that you saw doing the grinding of the corn. His name was Jim. I want to thank him. He gave me such a great history lesson from the area about the Potawatomi Indians and how the brother and his brother-in-law, the Graue, after whom the mill is named, came to this area and built this mill, and his brother-in-law built a lumber mill across the road, and his brother-in-law provided all the wood for a road that went from downtown Chicago, or from the outskirts of Chicago, all the way out west to a town called Naperville, which is quite a bit west of the city. And it was called Plank Road, and it was aptly named because it was made out of wooden planks, and this gentleman provided all the wood for that. So it was a great history lesson. I hope you had fun. Again, get out there. There's so much to do. We had a great little picnic after we went out. There's a nice little area here in the shade. We brought a bunch of snacks and drinks, and then we just picked up a couple burgers to supplement that. So enjoy life. It's too short. I want to wish you all a very, very happy 4th of July. I'm so glad that we live in a country where we can enjoy our independence as we do here in the United States. So happy 4th, everybody. Thanks for joining me. And remember, the measure of your worth is not determined by your dress size, your age, your race, your gender, your religion, or your ability. Everyone is welcome here. Until next time, bye-bye, everybody.